Helena, a 90-year-old homeless woman, had long grown used to the harshness of the streets. Life wasn't easy, but every day she carefully counted her meager coins to ensure she could eat. One day, when she entered a bakery, she was humiliated by the manager and felt the ground vanish beneath her feet as she left. What happened next was beyond anything she could have imagined. It was nearly noon when Helena stepped through the automatic doors of one of the city's most famous bakeries. Her hesitant steps echoed across the busy floor as she adjusted her worn scarf around her wrinkled neck, showing signs of her age. Her disheveled white hair, tousled by the cold downtown São Paulo wind, contrasted with her faded clothes that had seen better days. At 90, Helena bore the scars of a life spent on the streets. People hurried past her, some casting pitying glances, while others deliberately avoided her gaze, revealing their discomfort with her presence. However, Helena had become familiar with these judging eyes. Over time, she learned to accept the false compassion and the unease of strangers as part of her everyday existence. Since she became homeless, she carried only one memento from her past, a delicate silver necklace with a blue quartz pendant, the last reminder of her daughter Barbara, who died in a car accident 30 years ago. After Barbara's death, Helena couldn't cope with the grief and lost everything. She was 60 when her daughter passed away and had no other living family members. Slowly sinking into sorrow, she stopped taking care of her daily responsibilities, like paying bills. After months of unpaid rent, she was evicted, and without the means for a retirement home, Helena had no choice but to live on the streets. Reaching the bakery counter, Helena paused in front of the display filled with savory bread, sweets, and tempting cakes. Her tired, hungry eyes settled on a simple loaf of bread wrapped in a clear plastic bag. Helena knew the bakery's homemade bread was cheaper than the store-bought ones. She counted her coins with trembling fingers, mentally calculating if she had enough to satisfy her hunger. The worn coins glistened faintly under the bakery's lights. It was a small amount, but all she had. With a sigh, she looked around for someone to assist her. The clerk, a young woman with dyed green hair, glanced at Helena with a mix of curiosity and sympathy. It was unusual for someone as humble as Helena to step inside, but something about the fragile elderly woman stirred her. "How can I help you, ma'am?" The clerk's voice was gentle, contrasting with the constant chatter in the bakery. Helena met her gaze for a moment, her tired blue eyes gleaming with hope. "Just a piece of bread, please," Helena murmured, extending the trembling coins in her wrinkled palm. The clerk delicately took the coins, and as she quickly counted them, a look of confusion crossed her face, knowing the amount wasn't enough. "Of course, ma'am. One moment, please. You'll hand these to the cashier and we'll see what we can do." She turned to grab the bread, sliding it into a simple paper bag. To Helena, this piece of bread meant far more than just food. It was a promise of relief from the hunger that constantly followed her. As the clerk wrapped the bread, Helena looked around the bakery, watching people of all ages and walks of life rush by, each immersed in their own concerns and obligations. She felt like a distant observer of daily life, witnessing a world she no longer belonged to. When the clerk handed Helena the bread, a fragile smile spread across the elderly woman's wrinkled lips. "Thank you so much, young lady. God bless you," she said, accepting the bag with gratitude in her eyes. The clerk returned the smile, touched by Helena's quiet dignity. "No need to thank me. Take care, all right?" Helena nodded lightly, feeling the warmth of the freshly baked bread in her hands. She slowly stepped away from the counter, feeling slightly lighter despite the heavy weight of her life on the streets. With slow steps, she began to walk towards the bakery's register. Raoul, the bakery manager, had been watching the interaction with a stern expression, clearly unhappy. He had repeatedly made it clear to his team, "Do not give free food to homeless people." Vivian, the clerk, was disobeying a direct order despite her generous gesture. Raoul approached the counter with firm steps, his gaze shifting between Vivian and the elderly woman. "Vivian," he called, irritation heavy in his voice. "How many times have I told you about this? We can't just hand out free food to everyone." Helena, holding the small piece of bread, looked at Raoul with eyes full of embarrassment and sadness. "I have some coins, sir," she said, extending her trembling hand. "Maybe it's enough." Raoul glanced at the worn-out coins in Helena's hand with disdain. "That's not enough for even a crumb. All you're doing here is bothering the customers or trying to pickpocket one of them," he responded rudely. "You need to leave now." Helena hesitated, trying to appeal to the compassion she had sensed in Vivian. "Please, I just need a little food. Anything." Raoul crossed his arms and repeated, his brows furrowed. "You can't buy anything with that. Leave the bakery." The interaction began to draw the attention of other customers. A middle-aged woman sitting near the counter shot an irritated look at Helena and loudly commented, "You're bothering everyone here. Why don't you try asking somewhere else?" Vivian, feeling uneasy with the rising tension, quietly said to Helena, "I'm sorry. I really wanted to help." Helena felt the flush of embarrassment creeping up her face and looked at Raoul, hoping his attitude would shift, but his expression remained stern. The manager, intent on ending the situation, firmly repeated, "You need to leave now," grabbing the bag of bread from the elderly woman's hand. Realizing any further attempt to speak would be futile, Helena lowered her gaze and slowly turned to exit the bakery. The coins she had carefully counted, gathered from that morning's begging, still jingled in her palm as she walked away. The disapproving murmurs echoed around her, following her until she vanished from sight. As Helena walked away, she noticed Raoul turning back to Vivian with a stern look. "If you want to keep your job here, you need to follow the rules, Vivian. It's for the bakery's sake. Throw that piece of bread out. It's probably dirty after that old woman touched it." Vivian nodded, but a heavy sadness weighed on her. She watched Helena head for the exit, feeling a deep sorrow for the cruelty the world often showed to its most vulnerable. Raoul, satisfied that order had been restored, turned to resume his duties, but the unease in the air lingered like a cloud that couldn't easily be dispersed. Earlier that day, Danilo, an elegant businessman known for his luxury boutiques, had come into the bakery for a quick coffee before continuing with his schedule. He had witnessed the entire scene unfold, his concern shifting to outrage as he saw how Helena was being treated. As the tension grew with the unfolding conversation, Vivian, watching closely, felt a glimmer of hope when she saw someone stepping in to defend Helena. Danilo continued, his voice now firmer. "As the manager, you have the duty to treat everyone with respect. This woman has just as much right to a piece of bread as anyone else, and deserves respect, especially because she is elderly. It's our responsibility to help those in need, particularly in situations like this." Raoul opened his mouth to respond, but Danilo cut him off with a wave of his hand. "I'll pay for her bread and whatever else she needs, and I expect you to think twice before treating anyone like that again." Without waiting for a reply, Danilo headed for the door, following Helena's steps. Seizing the moment, Vivian grabbed an extra loaf of bread, quickly placing it in a bag and handing it to Danilo as he passed. "Thank you for doing this," the attendant whispered, her eyes meeting his with genuine gratitude. Danilo nodded, taking the bag and hurrying outside. He found Helena sitting on the curb, still clutching the coins in her hand. Kneeling beside her, Danilo extended the bag of bread Vivian had given him. "I'm sorry for what happened in there," he said gently. "Here's some food for you. What's your name?" Helena looked at him, surprised and moved by his unexpected kindness. "Thank you. My name is Helena," she murmured, her eyes welling up with tears. "I don't know how to thank you." Danilo smiled softly. "You don't need to thank me. Just take care of yourself. If you need more help, you can find me. My name is Danilo." Helena held the bread gratefully, feeling a comforting warmth in her chest. For a moment, the harshness of life on the streets seemed a little lighter, thanks to the kindness of a stranger. As Danilo stood up, he felt that he had done something truly meaningful that day, something that might inspire others to do the same. Yet he realized it wasn't enough. The elderly woman had been humiliated by the manager. An idea started forming in his mind. Turning back to Helena, still seated on the sidewalk, he called softly, "Helena, please, come with me. A piece of bread isn't enough. Let me buy you lunch." The two of them re-entered the bakery, and Danilo, with a firm and resolute expression, addressed Raoul once more. "I sincerely hope you reflect on this. No business should thrive at the expense of someone's dignity." Raoul, still stunned and unsettled, remained silent. Danilo continued, "I know the owner of this bakery, and with one call I could make things difficult for you. That's not my aim, but I don't think your behavior should go unpunished. I'm buying this woman's lunch, and I expect you to prepare it. Perhaps this will teach you something about humility." Danilo then ordered the biggest and most expensive meal on the menu. Vivian, with a supportive smile, glanced at Danilo, feeling inspired by the man's act of kindness. The bakery remained busy, but for a moment the customers who had been whispering were now silently observing, some visibly moved by the scene unfolding before them. As Raoul prepared Helena's lunch, Danilo, keeping a close eye, invited her to sit at a more secluded table to enjoy the moment and get to know her better. "Please, have a seat while your meal is being prepared," Danilo said, gently guiding Helena to a table. "You deserve much more than just a piece of bread." Helena, still visibly emotional, nodded in agreement. "I don't know how to thank you," she murmured. Danilo responded with a warm smile. "We all deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. You are no different." Despite sitting at a distant table, some customers began murmuring among themselves again, but their expressions softened as they grasped the depth of Danilo's gesture. Ignoring the quiet whispers, Danilo was focused on learning more about the elderly woman's story. "Helena, I'd love to hear about you if you don't mind. Sorry to ask, but how old are you and how did you end up in this situation?" Danilo hesitated briefly before gently asking his final question. "How do you manage to survive on the streets at such an advanced age?" Helena, visibly uncomfortable being the center of attention, hesitated at first. However, seeing the sincerity in Danilo's eyes, she began to speak. "Oh, sir, life on the streets is not easy. You have no idea how hard it is to be met with looks of disdain every single day. People pass by as if you're invisible or worse, like you're a burden." She paused, recalling moments of pain. "Sometimes young people mock me, throw things or say cruel things. Others look at me with fear, as if I could harm them just by sitting on the sidewalk." Helena paused again before continuing. "But I can't complain about everything. I do get a few coins here and there, small acts of kindness that help me survive." She then shared more of her story. "It's been a few years now that I've been on the street. I lost my home when I could no longer pay the rent. My daughter passed away many years ago and I don't have any family left. I've always managed to get by with little, but over time things got worse and I lost everything." Danilo listened intently, his expression full of empathy and concern. "It must be incredibly difficult for you, Helena. I'm so sorry you have to go through this." Helena nodded, her eyes downcast. "Yes, but I try to keep going. The people on the street are my only company now. Most of them are in the same situation as me, just struggling to survive day by day. Sometimes we help each other by sharing the little we have, but it's never easy." Danilo felt a lump in his throat. It was hard to imagine how someone so kind could endure such a harsh life, especially at her age. "Is there anywhere you can go, perhaps a shelter or a social service that could help you?" Danilo asked, his voice full of concern. Helena sighed deeply before replying. "I've tried a few shelters, but they're always overcrowded and it's hard to get a spot. Besides, they're not safe. I've seen terrible things happen in those places. I prefer the streets because at least I know what to expect." As Raoul finished preparing the meal, he brought the plate over to Helena. Danilo gave a grateful nod before turning his attention back to her. "I'd like to do more for you, Helena. Not just today, but something lasting. Is there any way I can help to improve your situation?" Helena looked at Danilo. her eyes wide with surprise and emotion at his offer. "I don't know. I don't want to be a burden to anyone. This meal is already more than enough," she responded, her voice soft. As Helena began eating, Danilo remained deep in thought. He still found it hard to grasp that a 90-year-old woman was living on the streets. His thoughts were interrupted when something caught his eye. A delicate silver necklace around Helena's neck, adorned with a small blue quartz pendant standing out against her worn scarf. The sight of the necklace seemed to transport Danilo back in time, stirring a mix of curiosity and admiration. "Helena, that necklace around your neck, it looks quite special. Can you tell me more about it?" Danilo asked, trying not to seem intrusive, but clearly interested. Helena glanced down at the necklace, as if only just remembering it was there. She gently touched the surface of the blue quartz pendant, her fingers brushing it with care. After a moment of silence, she turned to Danilo with a distant, memory-filled gaze. The quiet stretched between them until Danilo, sensing the weight of the moment, broke the stillness. "It's a beautiful piece, and it seems to hold great sentimental value for you," he remarked softly. Helena nodded, her eyes misty, and finally spoke. "Yes, it does mean a lot. When everything started to fall apart, I thought about selling it many times, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. It's all I have left from the past, a reminder of when life was different, when I was happy." Helena paused again, lost in her thoughts. "This necklace," she continued, "is one of the last things I have that belonged to my daughter, Barbara. After the accident, the hospital gave it to me. It's what she was wearing the day of the tragedy." Helena's voice trembled with sorrow. The mention of an accident and the name Barbara sent a chill through Danilo, making him shudder slightly. "Barbara," he repeated, feeling an unexpected connection form in his chest. His heart raced as fragments of his memories began to align. "Could you tell me more about her?" Danilo asked, his curiosity and interest deepening. Helena, sensing his genuine concern, continued with a mix of sadness and pride. "Barbara was my only daughter. She was bright, full of life, a kind soul always thinking of others. She dreamed of becoming an artist. Ever since she was a child, she'd spend hours drawing and painting." Danilo listened intently, his heart heavy as Helena shared her story of loss. The mention of fashion school made Danilo even more uneasy. "I'm so sorry, Helena. That must have been incredibly hard," he said, his voice filled with sympathy. Helena nodded, her eyes moist. "Losing Barbara was the worst pain I've ever felt. It was a sudden, terrible accident, and she had so much ahead of her." Danilo, deeply moved by Helena's grief, struggled to find the right words, unsure of how to approach the question burning inside him. "After she passed, this necklace became my last connection to her. It's like a part of her is still with me," Helena continued, gently holding the pendant. Danilo looked at her with newfound understanding. "Helena, this might sound odd, but you said her name was Barbara, right?" Helena nodded, intrigued by Danilo's shift in tone. "Yes, Barbara was full of life and dreams. She always said she wanted to make a difference. She worked hard in everything she did. Her loss was devastating, not just for me, but for everyone who knew her," Helena said. Danilo listened, gripping his hands to steady the tremble of emotion. "Did she ever mention someone named Danilo? I knew a Barbara years ago. She was very important to me," Danilo said softly, memories filling his voice. "We started as friends, and later we even dated for a while. Sadly, it didn't last long. She was an incredible artist, just as you've described, and she studied fashion. We were very close, but after college we lost touch. Then I found out she'd been in a car accident," Danilo shared, his voice laced with emotion. Helena looked at Danilo, their eyes locking in sudden realization. You knew my Barbara." Danilo, still overwhelmed by the flood of emotions, responded, "I'm not sure, Helena. You'd know better. Did she ever mention a friend or boyfriend named Danilo?" Tears streamed down Helena's face as the pieces started to fall into place. Danilo gently held her hand, sharing her sorrow and offering silent comfort. After composing herself, Helena looked at Danilo with fresh curiosity, connecting the dots. Yes, she mentioned a Danilo. She said he was the great love of her life. Are you telling me that's you? For a moment, Danilo was speechless as memories of Barbara rushed back. He nodded slowly, his eyes meeting Helena's. I think it's true, Helena. This can't just be a coincidence. Helena smiled faintly through her tears. My God, this is unbelievable. Barbara always spoke of you with such love and said you were someone who inspired and deeply cared for her. Danilo was overwhelmed by a mix of emotions. Sorrow over losing Barbara, but also a strange sense of gratitude for reconnecting in such an unexpected way. Danilo reminisced about the precious moments he had shared with Barbara. The next few minutes were filled with him recounting his time with her. She meant so much to me. We were young and full of dreams, Danilo said, explaining how they met during their early college days and how Barbara had encouraged him to pursue his business aspirations. I was studying economics and she was in fashion. We became close friends quickly. She had this passionate way of speaking about life that pushed me to wake up and chase my dreams every day. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. For a long time we were just friends, but as graduation neared, I confessed my feelings for her. We started dating, and on prom night, I gave her a silver necklace with a small blue quartz pendant. Danilo swallowed hard, momentarily overcome, before continuing. After graduation, I went on a 6-month exchange program in the United States. Our relationship was still new, and we were deeply in love. We spoke on the phone every night, counting down the days until we'd see each other again. I always asked if she was wearing the necklace, and Barbara would say yes. But one day, she didn't pick up the phone, and a week later, her friend called to tell me about the accident. I couldn't believe it. There were only 3 months left of my program, and I didn't even get to say goodbye. I've never forgiven myself for that, Danilo admitted, his voice heavy with regret. Helena listened closely, holding the necklace delicately as Danilo's words stirred vivid memories of her daughter. Slowly, tears began to fall from Helena's eyes once more. It's a very painful subject for me, Danilo. Ever since Barbara passed, I've never been the same. That's how I ended up living on the streets, she confessed. Danilo's chest tightened as he shared the weight of their mutual loss. I understand, Helena. Barbara's death shattered me too. I haven't been able to truly connect with anyone since, he said. Helena gently touched Danilo's hand, offering him comfort. It's reassuring to know she had someone like you in her life. Barbara always spoke of your support and influence. She wore that necklace, a part of you, with her until the very end. They sat together in silence for a while, letting the magnitude of their connection sink in. Finally, Danilo broke the quiet. I never forgot Barbara or what she meant to me. Meeting you feels like a blessing, Helena. Helena nodded, her eyes shining with gratitude. Thank you for sharing this with me, Danilo. You've brought new meaning to this necklace and to my memories of Barbara. Danilo smiled softly, then added, I want to do more for you, Helena, for Barbara. I can't just leave it at this lunch. How can I help you? Helena considered his offer, her fingers once again brushing against the necklace. Your presence and your words already mean so much to me. Danilo, filled with renewed resolve, shook his head. No, Helena, I must help you to honor Barbara's memory and find peace in knowing I've done my final act of love for her. With a choked voice, he continued, Barbara was an extraordinary person. Not a day goes by without me thinking of her. Knowing her necklace ended up with you gives me a sense of comfort. But I can't accept that you, the mother of someone I loved so dearly, are living on the streets. Helena looked at Danilo, touched by his sincerity. It's clear you loved my daughter deeply. It must have been as hard for you as it was for me. Just don't worry about me, she said. Danilo felt a new determination well up inside him. Life has given me a chance to honor Barbara's memory. I'm taking you off the streets. Come with me to my home, and I'll make sure you have everything you need for a comfortable life." Helena nodded gratefully. "Oh my God, Danilo, I don't know what to say." Danilo then asked Helena for a moment to make an urgent call. He reached out to his secretary and cancelled all his appointments for the week, resolute in helping Helena as much as he could. With a kind smile, Danilo led Helena to his car. Upon arriving at Danilo's home, Helena was awestruck by the grandeur and luxury of the place. She had never been in such an impressive environment. "Make yourself at home, Helena. This will be your residence for the next few days. Here you won't have to worry about anything," Danilo said, guiding her through the elegant entrance into the spacious and well-decorated interior. Danilo showed Helena to the room she would temporarily occupy and introduced her to Patricia, one of his staff members, who would be her personal caretaker. Patricia was a warm and welcoming woman, ready to assist Helena with anything she needed. "Feel free to ask Patricia for anything. If you're hungry, she can prepare something for you at any time," Danilo explained with a reassuring smile. Patricia, smiling warmly, invited Helena for a walk in the beautifully maintained garden while preparing tea and a piece of cake for the new guest. As they strolled through the garden, Patricia and Helena chatted, with Patricia sharing stories about her work in Danilo's home and her own family, while Helena spoke about her life on the streets and the daily struggles she faced. "You are so kind, Patricia. I'm incredibly grateful for all of this," Helena said, moved by the kindness and hospitality she was receiving. Patricia smiled and set a cup of tea and a slice of cake before Helena at an outdoor table. "We're here to help you, Helena. Mr. Danilo is always eager to make a difference in people's lives." As Helena enjoyed the warm tea and soft cake, she looked around, still amazed by Danilo's generosity and opulence. She realized that her life was changing in ways she could scarcely believe. The next morning, Danilo informed Helena that he would be out for the day, attending to some appointments, and would not be able to take her with him. Due to her age, he emphasized that Patricia would be available to assist her with anything she might need. Helena accepted with a nod, grateful for the care and attention she was receiving. She spent the day in Danilo's comfortable home, exploring the surroundings and adjusting to the idea of having a safe place to rest. Helena and Patricia grew closer as they sat in the sunlit garden, exchanging life stories that revealed their personal journeys. Helena shared with Patricia about her beloved daughter Barbara, who she had tragically lost in a car accident, and how the necklace she now wore was one of the few tangible memories she had of Barbara, a true symbol of intertwined love and grief. "Can you believe, my dear, a successful businessman taking in a 90-year-old homeless woman to spend time in his home?" Helena remarked. Patricia, in turn, opened up about her own past. She had lost her husband years before, leaving her to raise their 2 children alone. Patricia spoke about the struggles and triumphs she had faced over the years, showing Helena that despite the hardships, life remained a journey of hope and resilience. "It's not easy being alone in the world with 2 children depending on you, but grief teaches us a lot about life. I'm sure Barbara is watching over you from heaven, just as my husband watches over me and our children," Patricia shared. Helena was deeply moved by Patricia's story. Having lived on the streets for so long, she rarely had the chance to talk with someone so intimately and meaningfully. Patricia, with her empathy and understanding, had become not just a temporary caretaker but a friend, even though they had known each other for a short time. In the afternoon, Danilo returned home with a quiet determination in his eyes. He told Helena and Patricia that he needed their help immediately and led them to the car. "Please come with me, I can't explain right now," he said, appearing rushed. They drove to a shopping centre where Danilo wanted Helena to pick out some new clothes, while he went to the market to buy essential groceries. At the mall, Patricia and Helena spent several hours selecting suitable and comfortable clothing for Helena. Patricia ensured that everything was not only functional, but also to Helena's liking, Meanwhile, Danilo personally handled the shopping at the market, choosing fresh, nutritious foods and other essentials. He was preparing to make a big surprise for Helena. When Danilo arrived at the shopping center with the purchases, he saw Helena and Patricia waiting eagerly. With a warm smile, he invited them back to the car and drove them to a high-end apartment complex not far away. Helena felt somewhat uneasy entering such a sophisticated environment, but Danilo reassured her with a kind gesture. In the elevator, Danilo pressed the button for the 5th floor. As the doors opened, they were greeted by an elegant hallway leading to a spacious and luxurious apartment. Standing at the apartment door, Danilo turned to Helena with a serious yet warm expression. "Helena, Barbara meant everything to me. Her loss was a pain that never faded. Finding you and being able to help you now is a gift to me. That's why this apartment is for you, a safe and comfortable place I hope you'll come to call home from now on," Danilo said, deeply moved. Helena could hardly believe what she was seeing. Tears flowed freely as she took in the tastefully furnished and luxuriously equipped apartment. It was more than she had ever dreamed of. Helena was overwhelmed and at a loss for words, never having imagined that someone could be as generous as Danilo was being to her at that moment. She felt blessed not only to have found a home, but also true friends like Danilo and Patricia. Danilo then guided Helena and Patricia through the rest of the apartment, showing each room with pride. Patricia, ever attentive to Helena's needs, fetched the market purchases and the new clothes, bringing them into the apartment. They began organizing things, placing clothes in the closets and groceries in the immaculate kitchen. As the afternoon turned into evening, Danilo and Patricia continued to help Helena settle into her new home. The apartment, now filled with life and the promise of a better future, was a testament to the transformative power of compassion and human kindness. Before leaving, Danilo made an announcement that left Helena overwhelmed and speechless. Patricia would stay on as her caretaker, sharing the apartment next door, and all costs would be covered by Danilo. He also committed to paying all monthly bills and ensuring Helena had no financial worries. Helena expressed her heartfelt gratitude, still unable to fully grasp the generosity being extended to her. "You have no idea what this means to me, Danilo. Nothing I do in my life will ever be enough to thank you," she said. Danilo smiled gently and said he would give her a few days to adjust to her new life, but that he had even more plans for the future. Helena agreed, and before parting ways with Danilo, she spent the next few days settling into her new home and chatting with Patricia to pass the time. After many years, Helena was finally able to watch a full episode of the 9 o'clock soap opera. 3 days later, Danilo returned to Helena's apartment, eager to discuss a significant matter. Seated at the kitchen table, Danilo shared an idea he had been contemplating since meeting Helena: the establishment of a community fund aimed at assisting homeless individuals. This fund would provide not only meals, but also services like job counseling and housing access, with the goal of preventing elderly individuals like Helena from living on the streets. "What you experienced at that bakery demonstrates that people deserve to live with greater dignity. It's not enough to simply provide food. We must offer genuine opportunities for people to rebuild their lives," Danilo asserted with conviction. He detailed his vision of creating a community center that would not only serve meals, but also offer job training, employment assistance, and psychological support. Helena was enthusiastic about Danilo's proposal, agreeing that more needed to be done to aid the less fortunate, particularly the elderly. "That sounds wonderful, Danilo. You can count on me," she said. Over the following days, Danilo mobilized his entire administrative team to turn this vision into reality. They held meetings with community members, local business owners, and officials to discuss how to collaborate and create a lasting positive impact. The concept evolved into a concrete action plan, outlining initial steps such as fundraising, forming partnerships with local organizations, and identifying the first recipients. The collective energy and enthusiasm of everyone involved were palpable, driven by the desire to make a meaningful difference in the lives of those in need. Meanwhile, Helena, still adjusting to her new home and Patricia's caring presence, felt deeply thankful for having crossed paths with Danilo. As the community fund project developed, she became increasingly engaged, sharing her story and inspiring others with her resilience and hope. Helena's life, once marked by adversity and isolation, was now filled with new opportunities and purpose, thanks to Danilo's kindness, vision, and the community's support. After a few months of the project's success, Danilo announced his decision to increase his financial contribution to the community fund and pledged to speak with other local business owners to explore how they could contribute, whether through job creation, healthcare services, or other forms of support. "If each of us does a little, we can make a huge impact," he explained. News about the community fund quickly spread throughout the city. Inspired by Danilo's initiative, local businesses and entrepreneurs began adopting more inclusive and humane practices in their operations. Donations poured in, not just in money, but also in the form of food, clothing, and volunteer support. Meanwhile, Barbara's pendant remained on Helena's neck, symbolizing the powerful journey they had shared. It served as a reminder not only of Barbara and the loss they both had endured, but also of the compassion and determination to make a difference in the lives of others. Danilo continued to visit Helena regularly, discussing the fund's progress and listening to her ideas with genuine interest. Over time, their bond grew stronger, driven by the hope of creating a more just and welcoming future for all. The story of Helena and Danilo's meeting illustrated how small acts of kindness can have a profound and lasting impact. Barbara's memory lived on through Danilo's actions, inspiring a wave of compassion and solidarity throughout the city. What began as a chance encounter in a bakery turned into a remarkable twist of fate, intertwining two lives that were both closely linked and yet so different. Thus, Helena and Danilo's journey became not just a tale of encounters and destinies, but a powerful testament to the impact of compassion and the determination to make a difference. United by Barbara's pendant, their lives became a beacon of hope, lighting the way to a world where empathy and hope are the most cherished values. Did you enjoy the story? The Narrated Lives channel thanks you for your company. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below about what you thought of the story. Until next time.